Alicia, thank you so much for joining us. This is Alicia Jessop. She is a professor at University of Pepperdine and writer for The Athletic, and really appreciate you taking the time today to join us for this coffee convo. I think since you're here, Alicia, we'll just kind of like start with you. And you work with a lot of students. You have a history of obviously dealing with athletes and working with athletes previously. What are you seeing right now that these students and athletes are struggling with right now? Whether they're things that you're seeing online, or maybe students that you're talking to personally.
Great. Yeah. So thank you for having me, Evan and Myriam. Really excited to be with everyone today. Like Evan said, I'm a professor at Pepperdine University. So my students are in that Generation Z age range. And what we know about the demographics of Generation Z is they are digital natives. And so they kind of get a bad rap for spending all day on their smartphones. Older people like myself typecast them as people who don't know how to have a face-to-face conversation or how to engage with people. What I'm seeing that actually gives me hope is my students are adapting to this incredibly well. Not to say that we should fully adapt to this lockdown life, but one thing that has really struck me is while people my age, I'm 35, are freaking out over having to be stuck in our houses all day, this group of people knows how to communicate across physical boundaries. So this group of people, because they grew up with this in their hand, their friends aren't limited to this really small geographic location. They literally have friends around the world that they're used to speaking to, although it might not be verbal speaking, it might be speaking through a smartphone. They're used to speaking to these people constantly. So I think, I know the question was, what are they coping with? What are they dealing with? But I wanted to flip it positively. I think the one thing that they're doing very well is they're adapting. I haven't heard a complaint from a student. So I have students from literally around the world. Pepperdine shut down middle of March, so March 16th-ish, and most of the students had to leave campus. They are now in places like Singapore, Hong Kong, China, South Korea, doing classes online, and not one of them has complained to me. Not one of them said, "Oh, Professor Jessop, can I please have an extension? I'm 12 hours ahead of you." They're waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning to take tests and to make sure that their work is in on time. So I think for your clients, you have to go back to the special skills that you have that make you marketable. And one thing that every athlete has is resilience. And what we're all learning through this collective experience is who has resilience and who doesn't. And this group of students, man, they are so resilient. And I honestly can't find a negative thing about them. So these people's parents should be so proud. Their kids get beat up in the media saying, "Oh, these people are weak, they complain, their parents did everything for them." These kids are good. They give me a lot of hope. So that's positive.
I think that's great feedback, Alicia, because we don't hear it very often. And I think it's so true. Whether it's younger kids or college student, it's very true. They have definitely a heads up on our situation in dealing with this change, for sure.
100%. And for me, I never try to typecast generations. One thing I love about being a professor is the students keep getting younger. So you get to learn about this rising group of people, and in turn, you feel young too. But this experience has really opened my eyes to how people were categorizing this group as not being able to communicate and lacking personal connections. And we're watching how seamlessly they've transformed into this new normal. And they've been able to do that because they're communicating in their own way. And so I'm sure you all have been focusing on this too. One thing that I've been really fascinated with over the last month is esports has been a thing for the last couple of years. It's been part of our daily conversation. It's rising in popularity. Esports is now the new normal for sports. Every sport league is frantically trying to figure out how to not just dip their toes in it now, but to dive in, because that's where the world is. Not where the world's going, it's where the world is now. And these young people are already there prepared to maximize that opportunity that's landed. So a lot of interesting trends to be watching. And I'm really hopeful that the narrative surrounding Generation Z changes after this experience.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's interesting is these young people, and I guess this is anywhere from like 10-year-olds to 20-year-olds, I mean, they're built for this. They've been in this world their entire life. So while maybe FaceTiming with family might be a little odd to us in our mid to late 30s, this generation, this is very normal for them. And actually, you would probably make the argument that they might prefer to do the online classes and such. I mean, obviously, there's a personal connection that we're all missing out on, I think, right now. But in terms of the transition and dealing with that adversity, I think that's a great point, that everything in the media makes it seem like this is the worst generation ever. And really, there's a whole lot of creativity, adaptability, and I love you pointing that out and turning my negative question into a positive. So thank you for that.
Let's go back to the negative though. So what can the rest of us learn from this group of people? I think for so long, us old people have just assumed we have nothing to learn from the 10 to 18-year-olds. So what can the athletes that you're working with and the people watching this learn from how this group has adapted? And to me, there's a couple of learning points. One, don't be afraid to try new things. Just because this isn't your preferred mode of communication, don't be afraid to get on TikTok. One of my favorite Instagram celeb follows is Sarah Foster. She and her sister Erin are just so funny. And Sarah created this hilarious TikTok. Don't be afraid to try new modes of communication. But two, if you're still looking for a deep connection, there's ways to find that. It's just going to look different. So for me personally, I have a somewhat larger extended family that I don't talk to that often, but this experience has really brought us closer together, where tonight my 72-year-old aunt and I are going to get on a Google Hangout, and it's forcing me to ask people questions that I've avoided for the last 35 years of my life. We get into this groove where we're like, hey, how are you? That's our opening line every single time we see somebody. And we don't stop to listen to what the response is. And we just get into this pattern where conversation isn't meaningful anymore. And so I'm grateful for this, because I'm not only teaching my family members new technology, but like, let's have a real conversation. Like, what was the worst day in your life? How did you overcome this difficulty? What are you afraid about right now? And let's stop like hiding behind casualness.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, and I totally agree with you on the getting closer with family during this time. I've lived this for, over 10 years because I'm away from family. My family's still in Europe, and I've always told my parents and extended family, I got closer to them the day I started living far away. Because when we got on a phone call, we suddenly started asking more important questions, because I knew I had limited time. And so you get into deeper topics because this is your opportunity that you don't necessarily have if you live next door and you get to see each other every other day. So I really like this point that you made. The second one I think that I see as an opportunity right now is we have this ability to personalize and individualize everything we do. And you can see that as a teacher. I see it with my daughter. She's able to do school from home, but make it work for her own daily schedule, her own style of routine. She's an early riser, so she can get on really early. and then do other things during the day, you can really follow the pace of a student and help them at their level. And so I think there are opportunities that goes with the remote learning and the fact that we're following each other's pace now and not just like a standard for everybody, right?
Isn't it crazy that even though we're trapped inside, we're arguably more free than we have been? And there's part of me that feels so free because of that individuality and that opportunity to set my schedule. I'm a night owl. So don't tell my students this, they might be watching. I record a lot of their videos at night and I get their grading done at night because that's when I perform better.
You feel no guilt for it, where I think society in general tends to be advantageous to early riser, I think. And perhaps for the first time in your life, right, this is following a schedule that you like. And that's great. And there's no guilt because you can do it at your own pace. I think it's really exciting.
I should have been born in Spain. I like the siesta, going to dinner at like 11 p.m. That's my jam.
This is very similar to the life that I've kind of built for myself over the last 2 years. So work from home, do a lot of calls. I guess one of the big differences is I don't go to as many coffee meetings. And I think one of the things I'm learning is that not all those coffee meetings are necessary. I personally enjoy going to a coffee shop and working kind of in my own head, in my own world. But I think what I'm seeing is a lot of these coffee meetings that are, let's be honest, we're in LA, these could be 2-3 hour commitments, even for a 30-45 minute coffee. And is that really necessary? And not that, like, obviously there's a piece to human connection to all of this, but I'm very focused when I get into my work mode, and taking 2 hours of the day to go to a coffee is not relaxing or enjoyable for me at times. And I think what I'm learning is I don't need to go do that. I don't need to feel like that's necessary. If that can be handled in a 10-15 minute phone call, I need to handle it that way and get right back into what I'm working on. And I think that, number one, like, would make me more effective, and number two, would kind of cut down on maybe some of those unnecessary frustrations that I've dealt with in the past.
Yeah. Efficiency.
One thing that I have switched is, I've usually reverted to phone calls by default. And I think I do way more video calls now than I do phone calls for work. Just because it's more friendly, it's more relatable, personable, and you lose way less communication by being able to see the person. So I've definitely done less phone calls and more video calls than I did before. And I've enjoyed that.
I hope the video call is here to stay. I like it too.
Yeah, same here. And actually, my other thing that I was going to bring to the table for this coffee convo was talking about the future of education. And you mentioned a moment ago recording videos. So one of the things that I've seen really just in the last month or so in just kind of like looking at it as a whole and maybe taking a step back is how important soft skills are going to be in this new economy, in this new world. So this could be anything from communication to creativity to leadership. These are going to be extremely important. So it's kind of a two-part question. Number one, do you see kind of like the development of soft skills becoming a bigger piece of the collegiate education? And then number two, kind of maybe share with us a little bit about kind of your idea for the future of communication, because it sounds like you've already started recording classes at 11, 12 o'clock at night, whatever, whenever you operate at your highest level.
Yeah, good. So I'm going to start with the first question, the soft skills question. I don't think the economy has changed that much since the recession. So in 2008, 2009, we have, at that point, the greatest economic crisis of our lives, but now we're headed towards a possible depression. So buckle up. And with that recession, at the time, it really wiped out meaningful job opportunities for recent college grads coming straight out of school. There was just nothing out there that aligned with what you went to college for. So we saw in 08, 09, a lot of students returning to grad school who otherwise might not have. They were moving back into their parents' basements. They were taking part-time work or jobs that weren't aligned with their degree. And so over the last 10 years, we have believed that our economy is strong and that things have changed, things are robust. I listened to it's either an NPR or a New York Times podcast this morning that said, so today's April 16th, they released the job numbers today. And over the last month, all of the job gains our country made since the recession have literally been wiped out. So all of the job gains that had been made over the last 10 years were wiped out in the time span of a month. So what's the lesson? What's the lesson to the American employee or the American student? And it goes back to your question, Evan. I've worked with athletes transitioning out of sport since 2018, when I consulted for the National Basketball Players Association to help them build their off-the-court program for NBA players leaving the league and moving on to the next phase of life. I've worked with the Alliance of American Football, which was a startup football league. We made it 8 games, but a lot more than the XFL did this year. A lot of former NFL and CFL players trying to get a second shot at the game. But again, the game was unexpectedly taken from them when the league went bankrupt 8 games into the season. And so through those experiences and in working with these men, trying to pivot them into the next thing and to find that job opportunity, I've looked at a lot of job postings. And also as a professor, I've been a full-time professor since 2013, helping students find jobs. And I mentor a lot of students in all different fields. There are some consistencies that appear in every single job posting. Go on, Indeed. Go on Indeed or LinkedIn and pull up 10 different job listings. Just pick the top 10 job listings. You are going to see that almost every job listing, it doesn't matter if you're an engineer or an attorney or a media professional or a marketer, they all basically look the same. Mm-hmm. They all basically look the same. What do they want? They want you to be a good communicator. Communication is one central element that rolls through every single job posting. Team worker, so someone who is good teamwork. Problem solver. Problem solver could also be reported as being analytical. But yeah, there are some definite soft skills that cut across every field that if you don't have these things in this new economy we're working towards, you're in massive trouble. And so what's beautiful about working with athletes is athletes have those 3 things at a higher level than pretty much any person. Because what does it mean to be an athlete? You have to communicate. Like, athletes don't exist on islands. You have to be communicating, and you have to be a strong communicator to be a successful athlete. You have to be a problem solver. What is sport? At its core, what sport is using athleticism to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. You know, so in basketball, the problem is getting the ball through the net. In football, the problem is getting the ball into the end zone. Myriam, I don't know what the problem is in synchronized swimming, but maybe this analogy isn't perfect. So you have to be a problem solver. And then obviously I don't need to explain how sport incorporates teamwork, but yes, soft skills are hugely critical. I teach at a liberal arts school, which is kind of hilarious because I went to engineering school. So I went to a really technical undergrad education, and I went to law school, another technical field. And so I'm a big believer in having some hard skills, because at the end of the day, you have to have something that makes you different than everybody. But if you don't have those soft skills, you're up a creek. Okay, so that's the answer to the first question. Do you want me to keep going? Do you want to?
Well,
And
first of all, that was perfect. Yeah, that was great. Go ahead, Miriam.
I hear about this a lot, even in elementary school, because we keep being repeated as a parent that your kids are learning the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. And they're really saying these are the things you need to learn very, very early on, because they take more years to master. And eventually you can go, once you have these and they're like really anchored in your personality, you can add any other hard skill or technical skill on top of that. But those 4 C's are super important. So really like it.
The one thing that I see lacking in students that I think could be problematic, and so this would be something for your viewers to think about either for themselves or their children, I really see a lack in analytical skills, where I will give a student an open-ended problem. So I teach sport marketing. This semester, our client was the San Diego Padres, and the Padres asked us to create a marketing plan to increase ticket sales in Tijuana, Mexico. Wide open ranging question. I give my students that, and obviously I teach them. I don't just say, all right, figure it out. A lot of students in this younger age demographic, the analytical skills and the problem solving aren't there. And it goes back to one of those 4 C's, which is creativity. And so my theory as to why this might be is we have seen a cut of extracurricular activities in the K through 12 schools. So with the recession, there were massive budget cuts. So things like the arts got cut. I think that is proving to be hugely detrimental to our society. And we do have a growing practice amongst parents to shield their children from any sort of challenge, where if I see Junior struggling, I don't like watching him struggle, so I'm going to jump in and I'm just going to help him with it. We have to stop doing that, because it's not only creating anxiety amongst our young people. There's a great article in the Atlantic that came out this week about the rising levels of anxiety amongst American youth. It's like 10 pages long, so buckle down to read it. But the researchers say that one thing that is leading to these increasing levels of anxiety are parents who shield their kids from ever facing a challenge. And so as a professor, I'm seeing the impacts of that, where even though my students can communicate, they don't have that same analytical fortitude to solve problems. And in this economy that's coming, you need those soft skills, but you have to be a problem solver, because we are walking in to a massive problem right now. And the massive problem is there's going to be no jobs. So if your old MO was to just apply for a job and get a job and go to work for somebody else, that's not going to be there for a while. I mean, I don't want to be like the sky is falling person, but that is not going to be there for a while, just like it wasn't immediately after the recession. So what are you going to do? You have a problem. How are you going to solve that problem? And here you have to solve that problem by being entrepreneurial. So there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. And I think also understanding nobody is coming to save you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you got $1,200 from the government? Okay, that's great for going to the grocery store this weekend. But like, we're talking about, like you said, like not having the ability to go find a job right now. Mm-hmm. These are going to be big problems that, like you said, you're going to have to use that critical thinking and that creativity to solve these problems. And I think that's really important to kind of understand. The government is not coming here to save you. Your parents can only do so much. You have got to pull yourself up and create that new beginning or that new job, or figure out what you're going to do during all of this, the societal pause. And I think that's tough for some people. I understand there's other circumstances, but I think for the majority of us, we have the ability to do that. And I think just understanding that it is going to be on you is really important too.
Yeah, and so I think you raised a good point there. You said this is going to be tough. It's tough to tell somebody no one's going to help you. and the world is changing and there's this massive problem and you need to figure out how to navigate the problem. For a lot of people, hearing those things gives them anxiety, because to get all the way back to one of your two questions you asked me, it gives them a lot of anxiety because of our American educational system. And our American educational system, in my opinion, does not do a good job teaching people how to be analytical and how to solve problems. And so something I've really been focused on over the last 10 years, I graduated law school in 2009. I remember I was working for the Screen Actors Guild, thinking my career was all set. I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. I graduated in the top 10% of my law school. I was on law review. I had all of these fancy internships. I'm like, yep, my life is set, right? Like, I'm going to work in the entertainment industry. I'm set. And then I went to lunch one day and came back, and my administrative assistant was crying. She was a little emotional, but I'm like, what's wrong, Marcy? And she said, the world has changed. She was about 54 years old. I'm like, what happened? Like, I was only gone for an hour, and the stock market had tumbled. And with that tumble, all of her life savings at the time had essentially been wiped out. And so now she was here at 54 years old, faced with what a lot of you watching this were faced with, a transition. And how do we transition from something that at the time was all we ever wanted in our life? Okay, so maybe it was your athletic career. For me, all I wanted was this entertainment career. How do you transition when that thing is stripped from you unexpectedly? I didn't expect the stock market to fall and me to lose my dream job. How do you transition from that into something better? I would not trade what I do today for what I thought I wanted 10 years ago. In my mind, I have the greatest job in the world, being a sports writer and a full-time professor and a consultant. Why do I think it's the greatest job in the world? Because I built it. I built it on my own. I didn't go to work for somebody else. Yes, I work for Pepperdine, but being a professor is about as free of a job as you can have for somebody else. And so what I would challenge you all to think about is, yes, this could create a lot of anxiety, but how you create your own opportunity is you need to go inward. And you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. One, what gets me excited? Like, what are the 3 to 5 things that if I had to wake up every day for the next 30 to 40 years and only do these 3 to 5 things, I would be happy. So for me, my 3 things are writing. I love writing. I have to write every single day. I love sports, so I became a sports writer. And I love working with young people. So those were the 3 things on my list. Okay, so what do you love? What are you good at? Sometimes what you're good at isn't what you love. Okay, so what you love, what are you good at? And just do a mental dump. Like, I would tell you to go sit at the beach and do this. We can't really do that anymore. So find a nice corner of your home and just free write. What am I good at? Then what you do is you basically draw lines between the things you like to do and the things you're good at, and you see where they match. Okay, so if I like writing, but I'm a horrible writer, I'm not going to become a professional writer. If I like working with kids and I'm a good public speaker, there's probably an opportunity there. So you find the synchrony between the 2 columns, and then comes the third part. The third part is where you have to brainstorm what jobs or businesses you can create based upon the things that match. And so I encourage you to try to do that process on your own. But if you get stuck on the third part, that's where a mentor really comes in. So a mentor is someone that you would call and say, hey, I like working with young people and I'm an extrovert. What opportunities can you think of for me? And the mentor is somebody who's more experienced in life. It doesn't have to be in a particular field, but just somebody more experienced in life who has seen more opportunities, who could point you to say, this is the opportunity for you. Can I tell one story real quick?
Please do.
When I was working for the Football League, there was a man who had played in the NFL for 3 years. He was a top college football player. And he sat down with me after training one day and said, Alicia, I am scared for my future. So this is a big, powerful man. I am 5'4" on a good day. And I'm like, why are you scared for your future? Like, you're a former NFL player. Like, you're like a physical specimen. And he's like, nobody has ever told me what I'm capable of other than football. And obviously football is coming to an end because I'm playing for the Alliance. And I was like, all right, sit down. And I go, give me your resume. He's like, I don't have a resume. He goes, I don't have any job experience. I go, that can't be true. Like, let's walk through it. So he had played 3 years in the NFL. He had driven Uber before, and he had also worked for UPS. And he was categorizing the NFL experience, but more so the Uber and the UPS experience, as not being meaningful. And I was like, that's wrong. That's wrong. Experience is experience. What is an Uber driver? An Uber driver is not an Uber driver. An Uber driver is an excellent communicator. They have to talk to everybody. Like, if there is someone who excels at communication, it's an Uber driver. An Uber driver is someone who is focused on time management and attention to detail. You have to be paying attention to detail if you are spending your day navigating LA freeways to get people from point A to point B safely. And so what we did is we walked through all of his experiences where in his mind, he's like, I've done nothing. I moved boxes. I moved boxes for UPS. Like, no. You did not move boxes. You excelled at customer service. Yeah. You ensured that the product supply chain operated correctly. You kept businesses in business. So the reason why I'm telling you this story is so often, and this goes all the way back to where we started, so often our day seems mundane. And we get into this bad habit where we don't have meaningful conversations with each other, or we take our life for granted and we don't see the magic in what we're doing. We're just like, oh, this is another job. I'm just an Uber driver. You are not an Uber driver. You are someone that keeps people safe, gets them to their loved ones, and is one of the best communicators in this world. So expand how you look at what you do and what you're capable of. And if you can't see what is actually wrapped into what seems like a boring or a mundane or an unimportant job, that's where the mentor comes in. Have them break down what it means to be an Uber driver. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's so, I love that you said that, and I think that's a great place to end. We started, I asked you a question with kind of negative, a little bit of a negative connotation, and you immediately flipped it on me. And I think that's such a powerful message, is having the ability to reframe these stories that we tell ourselves in our mind and understand that there's positives in all of these experiences and situations. And I just think that's a great message that you shared with us today, Alicia. I'm at the end of my coffee, so I'm going to go get a refill. But thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to talking with you soon.
Good seeing you. Hope to see you in the flesh soon.
Thanks, Alicia. Thank you.
Hello. Bye, guys. Thank you.
See you.